Ack was a broken veteran. Max was a starving dog left to die. Neither had a home. Neither had hope. But the night their paths crossed, everything changed. This is how a man with nothing and a dog with no one built a place where second chances become real. Tell us where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories. A pale winter haze clung to the town like a second skin, cold enough to silence even the restless streets. Jack Miller carried the weight of the evening on his shoulders as he stepped out from the back door of the Ridgeway Distribution Center. At 47, Jack had a frame that once belonged to a soldier, but now looked like a blueprint softened by time. He was tall, over 6 feet, with shoulders that had rounded from years of lifting crates instead of rifles. His hair, once military neat, was peppered with gray and fell in slight waves that he trimmed himself every few weeks. His jaw was squared but unshaven, a shadow of coarse stubble lining it, giving him a ruggedness he neither cultivated nor cared about. The small creases at the edges of his steel blue eyes made him appear older than 47, not because of age itself, but because of memories that never left him alone. His back ached with every step, a dull throb running from his spine down his left leg, an old injury from Afghanistan, one of many wounds he returned with. The physical pain was manageable. It was the nights he feared more, the broken sleep, the sudden jolts awake drenched in cold sweat, the echoes of shouts and explosions from a world that no longer existed yet refused to let him go. PTSD was not a term Jack ever said aloud. He simply called it the noise. The Ridgeway job paid little, but it was steady. 10 hours a day loading pallets, stacking boxes, and forcing his body to keep moving so his mind didn't have the chance to wander. After work, he usually walked 2 blocks to help at Tom's garage for a few extra dollars. Tom Rodriguez, his neighbor, and perhaps the only person Jack would call a friend, was a stout man in his early 50s, with thick arms and a soft belly hidden under grease-stained overalls. His sun-browned skin and salt and pepper beard made him look like someone carved out of dusty workshop wood. Tom had a loud laugh and an even louder heart, but he also knew when not to ask questions. He'd once said he understood what it meant when life didn't give a damn anymore. A vague reference Jack suspected came from Tom's divorce years earlier. They never talked about it, but that silent agreement between them was enough. Tonight, however, Jack was too exhausted to stop by the garage. His joints burned. His eyelids felt heavy. The overtime shift had stretched past midnight, and the cold bit into the air like a warning not to linger. He shoved his hands deeper into the pockets of his worn, fraying jacket and took the shortcut behind the old discount supermarket. The alley was a narrow corridor of flickering street lamps and dumpsters overflowing with cardboard and broken pallets. The snow crunched under his boots in small, rhythmic protests. Halfway through the alley, he heard it, a faint sound, barely distinguishable from the wind scraping through metal gutters. At first he ignored it, assuming it was a loose piece of plastic, flapping around. But then it came again, a low, thin whimper. Not a cry of fear, more like a sound made by something already done fighting. Jack froze. Instinct straightened his spine, the soldier in him rising from beneath the tired warehouse worker. He scanned the dim alley the way he once scanned abandoned streets overseas, slow, deliberate, aware. The whimper came again, this time softer, as if whoever, or whatever, made it no longer had the strength to try. He followed the sound to a soggy cardboard box beside a dumpster. The box was collapsed on one side, its edges glistening with frost. Jack crouched, ignoring the sharp protest in his lower back. He lifted the flap. Inside was a German shepherd, or what remained of one. The dog was young, perhaps 1 or 2 years old, though its bony frame made it impossible to tell precisely. Its fur, meant to be thick and noble in shades of black and tan, was matted and patchy, clinging to its ribs like a thin, dirty blanket. Snow dusted its snout and gathered against a wound near its shoulder, an old injury, partially healed but clearly untreated. One ear stood upright, the other drooped, as if it had long since given up trying to listen for safety. Its eyes, deep brown, subdued but not empty, lifted weakly toward Jack. There was no sparkle, no heroic plea, no cinematic moment of instant trust. Just a creature too tired to fight, too cold to run, and too abandoned to hope. Jack felt something inside him shift, a small but undeniable pull in his chest. He recognized that look. He had seen it on soldiers who knew they wouldn't make it home. He had seen it in the mirror when sleep refused to come, and ghost gathered at the edge of his bed. Jesus, he whispered, the breath leaving him in a fogged sigh. The dog trembled, not at his voice, but at the cold that had already seeped deep into its bones. Jack reached a cautious hand toward it. The dog didn't bite, didn't growl. It simply blinked once, slow and resigned, a broken thing that expected nothing. Jack hesitated. He didn't have money, didn't have space, didn't even know if he'd be able to pay rent next month. The logical choice, the responsible choice, was to walk away, alert animal control, hope they arrived before the cold finished what abandonment had started. But logic had never saved him. Compassion had, determination had, and sometimes foolish stubbornness had kept him alive when reason said he shouldn't be. "You're not making this easy," Jack muttered. He shrugged off his only warm jacket, the one lined with thin fleece he'd saved up for during summer. He wrapped it gently around the dog. The animal whimpered softly, more from surprise than pain. Up close, Jack could feel its ribs under his fingertips, could feel its breath, shallow, uneven, desperate. "You're freezing," he murmured. "Damn it." He slid his arms under the dog, lifting it carefully. The weight was shockingly light, too light for a shepherd. The dog's head rested weakly against Jack's arm, breathing in small, trembling bursts. Jack swallowed hard. "All right," he said quietly, as if talking to himself. "I don't know what I'm doing. I can barely take care of me." A long exhale. But what the hell? We'll figure it out tomorrow. The dog made a sound, half whine, half sigh, as though accepting the fragile deal between them. Jack pulled the jacket tighter around it, shielding it from the wind. "I don't have much," he whispered, voice strained from exhaustion and something deeper, something older. "But let's try living together for one more day. Just one." He carried the dog out of the alley, disappearing into the cold night, neither aware that this small, tired decision, born not from heroism but from loneliness, would change both of their lives in ways neither could imagine. Morning arrived pale and brittle, the kind of cold light that made every surface in town look harder than it truly was. Jack Miller walked with uneven steps along Maple Street, the German shepherd wrapped awkwardly in his old jacket and pressed gently against his chest. The dog's breaths were shallow, each one a fragile pulse of warmth against Jack's ribs. Jack's arms trembled, not just from the winter chill, but from the fear that the animal might slip away before he reached help. The Brookhaven Animal Rescue Center sat in a modest brick building at the corner, its faded teal door slightly crooked from years of weather and minimal funding. A wooden sign hung above the entrance. "Every life matters." Jack paused, steadying his breath before pushing inside. The interior smelled faintly of antiseptic, wet fur, and lavender cleaning spray. Behind the front desk stood a woman, Emily Parker. She looked up from a stack of paperwork the moment the bell above the door chimed. Emily was in her early 30s, petite with a delicate frame, her wavy chestnut hair tied loosely into a low ponytail. She had warm hazel eyes framed by dark lashes, eyes that seemed soft even before she smiled. Her skin was pale with a faint rosy undertone, as if she blushed easily. She wore a burgundy cardigan layered over a simple cream blouse, both slightly oversized, hinting at someone who valued comfort over formality. When she spoke, her voice had the gentle quality of someone accustomed to comforting children, calm, soothing, but with an undertone of certainty. "Sir, you look like you walked through a storm," she said, her gaze falling to the bundle in his arms. "Is he hurt?" Jack nodded, clearing his throat. "Found him behind a supermarket, cold, starving, barely holding on." Emily stepped around the counter, her movements quick but careful. She gestured toward a small examination room. "Bring him here. We'll check him right away." Inside, the examination table was clean but old, its metal legs slightly bent. Emily helped Jack lay the dog onto a fleece blanket. She examined the animal with practiced hands, her touch gentle but firm. As she worked, a few strands of her hair slipped loose, brushing her cheek, but she paid them no mind. "He's severely malnourished," she murmured. "I can feel every rib, and this." She touched the dog's left hind leg carefully. The shepherd flinched, a soft whine escaping its throat. "Old fracture," Emily said. "Healed wrong. Whoever had him didn't treat it." Her tone shifted, not angry, just profoundly disappointed. Jack's jaw tightened. "So someone abandoned him." Emily met his eyes. "There's no microchip, no collar, no sign of care. I'm afraid yes. Whoever had him left him when he couldn't serve their purpose anymore." She didn't say the next part, but Jack could hear it anyway. A dog, bred to guard, discarded when injured. The shepherd blinked weakly, breathing shallowly, as if trying not to exist too loudly. Emily continued her assessment. "He's probably young, a year or two. Hard to tell with his condition, but there's still strength in him. Dogs like this, they don't give up easily." There was admiration in her voice, but also sadness. She moved to a cabinet and prepared a syringe. "This is fluids and vitamins. It'll help stabilize him." Jack watched her work, quick, focused, determined. The kind of determination he'd seen in medics during deployment. People who didn't panic, didn't falter, even when the world fell apart. When she was done, she stepped back. "He'll need treatment, food, warmth, and someone with patience." Her expression softened as she looked at Jack. "Someone who won't abandon him again." Jack shifted uncomfortably. I don't have money. Not enough for this." Emily studied him for a moment. She wasn't judging him, just reading the truth he wasn't fully saying. His worn boots, patched jacket, tired face, the way he stood like a man who had been bracing against life for far too long. "It's all right," she said quietly. "We can figure something out." Jack shook his head. "I don't want charity." Emily smiled, not pitying, but understanding. "This isn't charity, it's teamwork. If you're willing to help around the shelter, cleaning kennels, repairing fences, we can cover his food and treatment. No questions asked." Jack hesitated. He'd spent years refusing help, convinced he had to carry everything alone. Accepting support felt like admitting weakness. But then the German Shepherd stirred, pressing its nose weakly into the sleeve of Jack's jacket. A silent plea. Not dramatic, not heroic, just a faint, instinctive reach for warmth. Emily's voice lowered, gentle but firm. "Sometimes healing starts by letting someone help you." Jack exhaled, the air trembling as it left him. "All right, I'll do it." A smile warmed Emily's whole face. "Good. Then he's in the right place." Jack looked at the shepherd again. "I should give him a name." He thought for a moment, searching for something simple, something strong. "Max." Emily repeated it softly. "Max. It suits him." For the first time, the dog lifted its head just a little, eyelids fluttering as if acknowledging the sound. Over the next few days, Jack visited the shelter each morning before work and returned in the evenings after his shift. He cleaned kennels, fixed a broken latch on the back gate, and carried heavy bags of dog food, tasks that left his muscles sore, but his mind unexpectedly calm. Max stayed in a warm recovery room. Emily checked on him constantly, adjusting his bandages, preparing special meals, even sitting on the floor beside him during her breaks. She spoke to him with the kind of warmth that could coax light into dark places. Max didn't bark, didn't growl, didn't trust. He curled into himself, at every sudden sound, flinched when anyone approached too quickly. Trauma lived in his bones just as it lived in Jack's. One night, Jack returned to his small rented room with Max resting beside the bed. The dog had been released for home recovery under strict instructions, and Jack had followed every one of them with military precision. Exhausted, he fell asleep quickly, a rare occurrence. But the dreams came. They always did. Shouts, sand, smoke, a friend's voice fading, the ground shaking beneath him. Jack jerked awake, breath ragged, hands shaking uncontrollably. He pressed the heels of his palms against his eyes, trying to stop the tremors. Then, quiet footsteps, soft tapping on the wooden floor. Max emerged from the shadowed corner where he had been lying. Slowly, carefully, he approached. No bark, no whine, just quiet, steady presence. The German Shepherd lowered his head and rested it gently on Jack's trembling forearm. Jack froze. The shaking eased, not completely, but enough for him to breathe again. He lowered his hand onto the dog's back. Max didn't flinch this time. Instead, he leaned into the touch. Two beings stitched together by wounds no one could see. In that dim room, illuminated only by the street lamp outside, Jack whispered the first honest words he had spoken in years. "You get nightmares too, huh?" Max blinked, steady and calm. Jack's voice softened. Maybe we'll figure this out together." And just like that, quiet, understated, fragile, their healing began. Spring arrived quietly in Brookhaven, the kind of muted season when the snow melted reluctantly and the air held a chill as if winter were unwilling to release its hold. For most people, the shift brought relief, but for Jack Miller, 47 and already worn thinner than he'd admit, the warmer mornings came with a different kind of cold. The reduction notice at the Ridgeway Distribution Center had been taped to the break room wall. Short, impersonal, typed in bold letters. Cut hours effective immediately. Jack had stared at it long enough for the lines to blur, knowing without needing to ask that restructuring meant cutting the hours of whoever looked most replaceable. A middle-aged veteran with chronic pain and a quiet demeanor rarely survived such decisions. His shift was reduced by half hours, half wages, half of what little stability he had. So he walked home slower that evening, Max trotting slightly uneven at his side. The German shepherd's injured leg had improved, but still bore the stiffness of old harm. Max's fur was healthier now, thicker and cleaner thanks to shelter medicine, though his ribs still showed faintly beneath his coat. His eyes had changed, though, no longer empty, now watchful, protective, the eyes of a creature who had chosen Jack with a loyalty that frightened Jack almost as much as it comforted him. The landlord, Mr. Powell, waited by the stairwell when Jack arrived. Powell was a thin, sharp-faced man in his late 50s with close-cropped gray hair and a permanent frown etched into his narrow features. He wore wire-rimmed glasses that made his eyes appear even smaller, like a man constantly evaluating everyone through a microscope. His beige coat hung loosely on his bony shoulders, giving him the look of someone perpetually chilly and perpetually displeased. "Miller," Powell said, arms folded tightly. "Rent was due on the 1st. Jack nodded. "I know. I'm working on it." "Working on it isn't paying it." Powell's gaze shifted to Max, his lips pressed into a thin line. "And pets aren't allowed when tenants fall behind." Jack felt Max shift closer to him, the dog's flank brushing against his leg. "I'll have the money soon," Jack said, keeping his voice level. "Just need a little time." "You have 1 week," Powell snapped. "After that, the dog goes, or you both go." He turned and climbed the stairs, muttering something about charity cases, his steps sharp and final. Jack stood there for several seconds, jaw clenched, the weight of Powell's words settling on him like stones. Max nudged his hand, sensing tension, and Jack managed to exhale slowly. "It's all right," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if he meant it for Max or himself. Over the next days, the exhaustion in Jack's bones deepened. He worked fewer hours at the warehouse and picked up small tasks at Tom Rodriguez's garage whenever possible. Tom noticed the strain. "You look beat," he muttered one afternoon, wiping grease from his hands. Tom, stout and heavy-armed, was a man forged by blue-collar life. His graying beard made him look older, but his warm, dark eyes held a softness shaped by years of hardship, especially the divorce that had stripped him of both family and home once. He'd confessed to Jack once over a late beer that he knew what it felt like to lose the things that kept you grounded. "Ain't sleepin'?" he asked. Jack shrugged. "Doesn't matter." Tom didn't press. He never did. But he placed a hand on Jack's shoulder briefly, a gesture of quiet assurance. Even with the extra work, the numbers didn't add up. The frustration bled into Jack's posture, tightening his muscles, sharpening his voice. Emily noticed almost immediately. She saw it the moment Jack walked into the rescue center that Thursday afternoon, Max limping slightly behind him. Emily was cleaning water bowls, sleeves rolled up to her elbows. Her soft chestnut hair was tied back in a loose knot, and she wore a mint green shirt under a worn denim apron splattered with paw prints. Her hazel eyes lifted when Jack entered, reading the discomfort in his tightened jaw and weary steps. "You're pushing yourself too hard," she said gently, "and you look like you haven't eaten since Tuesday." Jack forced a smile. "I'm fine." Emily's brows knitted slightly. "You don't need to hide things here." But he did, or at least he believed he did. Jack changed the subject, going about the tasks she assigned, refilling kibble bins, repairing a loose kennel latch, sweeping the back hallway. He worked with mechanical focus, as if stopping long enough to think would break him open. That same afternoon, as he and Emily stepped outside to bring in a bag of supplies, a loud crash echoed from behind the center. A man stood in the yard, swaying slightly, one hand gripping a beer bottle, even though it wasn't yet 4 p.m. He was in his mid-40s with patchy stubble and a red flannel shirt that hung loosely over his thin frame. His hair was unkempt, his eyes bloodshot. Someone worn down not by one tragedy, but by a collection of poor choices and long nights. He shouted slurred curses at a small puppy that had slipped from a crate, the dog trembling near a wooden post. Emily stiffened. "That's Daryl," she whispered. He dropped off a pup earlier, but didn't like being told he had to fill out forms. He's unstable. Jack stepped slightly in front of her without realizing it. Daryl raised his hand as if to strike the puppy. Before Jack could react, Max moved. The German shepherd positioned himself between them, Jack on one side, Emily on the other. Max didn't bark, didn't lunge. He simply lowered his head and let out a deep, controlled growl, a warning, a line in the dirt. Daryl stumbled back, pointing at Max. "Stupid mutt," he slurred before turning and staggering out of the yard. Emily exhaled shakily. "I hate that he can just walk away like that," she muttered. Jack reached down and touched Max's head. The shepherd's ears twitched, but he remained steady. "You protected us," Jack murmured, caught between awe and gratitude. Max looked up, eyes dark and steady. Then, quietly, he licked Jack's hand. Not with excitement, not with bravado. Just a simple acknowledgement, a reassurance born from something instinctive and deep. Emily smiled softly. "He trusts you." Jack swallowed hard. "Maybe I don't deserve that trust. Maybe he thinks you do." Her voice carried a truth he wasn't ready to accept. That night, reality pressed harder. Jack sat on the floor beside Max, his back leaning against the peeling wall of his small room. Max lay curled against him, warm and breathing softly. Jack's hand moved slowly through the shepherd's fur. "I can't lose you," he whispered. "But I don't know how to fix this." Max nudged closer, as if offering silent support. Jack felt his eyes burn. The world had taken so much already. Brothers in arms, sleep, purpose, stability. But Max was the one thing he wasn't willing to sacrifice. He leaned his forehead gently against the dog's. "I won't give you up, no matter what happens." In that dim room, with bills scattered on the table and the weight of uncertainty pressing heavier than any battle he'd fought, Jack made a quiet vow, a vow that would shape every step that followed. The days that followed were a blur of errands, worry, and the slow grind of survival, but spring finally began to soften the air around Brookhaven. The snow receded into thin patches along sidewalks, and the scent of thawed earth carried the promise of something new, though Jack Miller, 47, felt only the weight of each passing hour. He had taken on a delivery job, small, unreliable gigs arranged through an app that paid per route. It wasn't enough, not really, but it was something he could stack onto his warehouse shifts and the occasional work at Tom's garage. And he needed every dollar now. Every morning he woke to the sound of Max stretching beside his bed, the shepherd's tail tapping softly against the wooden floor like a gentle reminder that he wasn't alone. Max's injured leg had strengthened, his fur thickened, and his once fearful eyes now carried a growing steadiness. But he still startled easily and rarely barked unless necessary. a dog who had learned silence the hard way. One breezy afternoon, Jack was dropping off a package near Pine Hollow, a small neighborhood with tidy lawns and houses painted in soft pastels. Max walked at his side, wearing the new harness Emily had helped him pick out, a simple black strap with reflective stitching. Jack didn't plan to bring Max on every delivery, but he'd slept little the night before, and couldn't bear the thought of leaving the dog alone while his mind spiraled into dark places. As he returned to his truck, a sudden commotion erupted from across the street. A boy, no older than 8, with sandy blonde hair sticking out beneath a baseball cap, was being pulled violently by a large dog that looked like a muscular mixed breed. The boy stumbled, skidding dangerously close to the edge of a steep, grassy slope that led down to a drainage canal. It happened fast, so fast that Jack barely had time to register the movement. Max did. The German Shepherd barked sharply, a single explosive warning that cut through the quiet street. His stance stiffened, ears forward. That bark startled the boy enough to pause, making him lean backward instinctively instead of forward with the momentum. It was just enough. Jack sprinted the remaining distance. "Got you!" he shouted, grabbing the boy's arm a second before the child could tumble down the slope. The boy gasped, wide-eyed and pale. The mixed-breed dog, overwhelmed and confused, continued to tug, but Jack steadied them both until the boy found his balance. A woman, the boy's mother, rushed out from the yard. She was in her mid-30s with auburn hair tied back in a messy bun, wearing paint-stained jeans and a flannel shirt. Her green eyes were sharp with worry. "Leo! Oh my God!" She pulled her son into a tight embrace before turning to Jack. "Thank you." I looked away for 1 second. 1 second, and he nearly... Her voice cracked. Jack waved a hand gently. "He's okay. Dogs get excited. Happens." She nodded gratefully, though her hand still trembled. When she noticed Max standing calmly a few feet behind, her face softened. "Your dog," he warned him, didn't he? "Yeah," Jack murmured. "He picks up on things fast." The woman managed a small smile. "Well, he saved my boy from a broken leg at least." Jack exhaled, giving Max a subtle nod. The dog simply sat, tail sweeping the ground, his dark eyes observing everything with quiet intelligence. Later that evening at Tom's garage, Jack recounted the incident while tightening a bolt on an old Harley. Tom Rodriguez laughed heartily, wiping oil from his thick hands. "Jack, you might not know it, but you train that dog better than half the fancy centers around town." Tom was in his early 50s, broad-shouldered, his black beard flecked with white. His hands were calloused from decades of engine work, and his face carried the deep lines of a man who'd weathered storms, divorce, financial ruin, rebuilding from nothing. Yet he always found a joke to soften the edges around him. Jack smirked. "I didn't train him. He just knows what to do." "Nah," Tom countered, wagging a finger. "You two talk to each other, not with words, but you do. That's training. That's trust." The thought lingered long after Jack left the garage. That night, as Max curled beside him, head resting on Jack's knee, a small spark flickered in the back of his mind. A possibility, a sliver of hope. The next day at the rescue center, Jack mentioned the idea to Emily and Sarah. Sarah Hartman, the center's veterinarian, stood at a metal table preparing vaccines for a newly admitted terrier. She was in her early 40s, tall and slender, with sharp cheekbones and deep-set brown eyes that carried the quiet intensity of someone who had lived through burnout more than once. Her thick, dark hair was pulled into a sleek ponytail, and she wore a navy scrub top under a faded gray hoodie. Sarah rarely smiled fully, but when she did, it softened her otherwise serious features into something unexpectedly warm. She paused her work. "A training class?" "Nothing fancy," Jack clarified. "Just basic obedience. Stuff people never had time to teach their dogs. Sitting, staying, walking, without dragging their owners into traffic." Emily brightened instantly. "Jack, that's actually brilliant." She stepped closer, her hazel eyes shining with gentle excitement. "And the community needs something like that. A lot of dogs here never get training because people can't afford it." Sarah nodded, folding her arms thoughtfully. "We have that old fenced lot behind the center. It's not much, but it's big enough for a class." Jack hesitated. "I don't want to charge anything. Just, if people want to donate to the center, they can." Emily smiled at him, soft and proud. "You're helping more than you realize." The following week, Jack held his first unofficial session. 3 dogs showed up: a bouncy golden retriever, a senior beagle with cloudy eyes, and the mixed-breed dog who had nearly pulled Leo down the slope, brought by his grateful mother, now calmer and holding a proper leash. Leo came too, grinning at Max like the dog was a superhero. Max sat beside Jack, calm and steady. He demonstrated each command with minimal hand gestures, responding with surprising precision for a dog who once flinched at every sound. The class wasn't glamorous, it wasn't polished, but it worked. Words spread slowly at first, then faster. "There's a kind vet and a gentle teacher at the rescue center," people said, "and a veteran who trains dogs for free. His shepherd, Max, smartest dog in town." The donation jar, just an old coffee tin Emily decorated with paw print stickers, began collecting small bills and coins. Not much, but enough. Enough for food, for rent, for Max, enough to breathe again. One evening after everyone left and the sun dipped low, Jack stood at the empty lot, watching Max chase a falling leaf lazily across the ground. He felt something steady unfurl inside him, something he hadn't felt since before the uniform, before the nightmares, before everything fell apart. Purpose, not a grand one, not heroic, just enough to matter, enough to change one life, maybe several. Emily approached quietly, her hands deep in her cardigan pockets. "You did good today," she said. Jack looked at her, then at Max. He did most of the work. "You both did." She paused, her smile small but sincere. "I'm glad you're here, Jack. The town needed someone like you." He swallowed, unsure how to respond. But Max trotted to his side, leaning against his leg. Jack placed a hand on the dog's back. "Feels like, for the first time in a long time, I'm not just getting through the day," he murmured. "Feels like I'm part of something." Emily nodded. "You are." And as the last light of evening melted across the lot, Jack realized something simple but powerful. His life was no longer only about surviving. It was about building something worth keeping, something he didn't have to face alone. Summer settled gently over Brookhaven, washing the town in warm light and the earthy scent of grass warmed by the sun. The small training yard behind the rescue center, once little more than an uneven patch of dirt, now felt alive each afternoon. What began as 3 dogs and a handful of curious children had slowly transformed into something larger, something meaningful. And Jack Miller, who once moved through life like a man walking through fog, found himself standing at the center of it. Every week, more people joined the sessions. Retired couples with aging dogs, young parents with excitable pups, teenagers eager to teach their first pets tricks. The small donation jar filled just enough to keep Jack afloat, but something more valuable filled him: purpose. The change started when a local volunteer group called Brookhaven Neighbors stepped in. They were a collection of townsfolk led by Marcia Ellis, a woman in her late 50s with a full figure and short silver curls that framed her round, cheerful face. Marcia was the kind of person who spoke with loud warmth, every sentence ending in either laughter or a determined hum. Her floral summer dresses and bright beaded bracelets gave her the look of someone who refused to let age dim her spirit. Hers was the type of kindness sharpened by hardship. She'd lost her husband to illness 5 years earlier, and had since dedicated her free time to community projects. "We heard you could use a fence," she had said one Saturday morning, marching onto the training yard with a clipboard in hand. "And maybe a proper play area, unless you plan on running a dog academy in a mudfield forever." Jack blinked. "I didn't ask for anything." Marcia grinned. "Sweetheart, no good thing grows alone. Let us help." Behind her came a mix of volunteers carrying lumber, tools, and enthusiasm. College kids on break, middle-aged dads who enjoyed building things, and even elderly neighbors armed with deck chairs and pitchers of lemonade. And so it began. Without fanfare or funding or grand announcements, the small town built something together. Sarah stopped by daily to supervise the safety of the layout. Tom spent entire afternoons drilling posts, his thick arms working with effortless strength. Emily brought cold drinks, her soft hazel eyes warm with pride, paint smudged across her cheek after decorating wooden planks with paw prints. Max wandered among the workers, tail swishing slowly, sniffing hands, and offering quiet companionship. Every now and then he paused beside Jack as if checking that his human wasn't overwhelmed. One day, while Jack hammered the last board into place, Emily stepped beside him. She was wearing a light blue summer blouse tucked into simple khaki pants, her chestnut hair braided loosely over one shoulder. A ray of sunlight caught her freckles, making her smile seem even gentler. "Have you ever thought about it?" she asked softly. Jack paused mid-swing. "Thought about what?" "That maybe you're healing yourself." Her voice was warm but not intrusive. "By helping them. By helping Max, by helping the town." Jack stared at the half-finished fence, chest tightening. He didn't answer, not because he disagreed, but because admitting it aloud felt like admitting he deserved the healing. Emily didn't push. She simply placed a hand lightly on his arm before walking away to help paint another board. 2 weeks later, the fence was done, the ground leveled, and a small wooden shed built in the corner to store toys and supplies. Tom stood proudly with sawdust still clinging to his beard. "Needs a name," he declared. "Place like this can't just be called the yard. Sounds like a prison." Marcia laughed. "Exactly. We need something hopeful, something that tells folks this is where new beginnings happen." Emily's eyes drifted to Max, who was lying in the shade with a soft expression that only recently replaced his old fearful stillness. "What about?" she began slowly. "Max's corner?" Everyone turned. Jack froze. His throat tightened unexpectedly. Emily continued, voice gentle and sure. He's the reason this started, the reason Jack found this path, and he represents what this place is meant to be, a second chance. Sarah nodded, leaning on a shovel. I like it. It fits. Marcia clapped once. Max's Corner it is. Tom carved the sign himself, working late at the garage on a smooth plank of cedar. He chiseled each letter with steady hands, giving the wood a warm curve along its edges. When he brought it to the rescue center that bright early summer morning, Emily painted the lettering by hand, a soft cream color outlined in forest green. Beneath the name, she added smaller words in her elegant cursive, a place for second chances. Jack swallowed thickly when he saw it. Together, under the soft warmth of the afternoon sun, the three of them, Jack, Tom, and Emily, lifted the sign into place on the fence. Sarah watched with her quiet, approving smile. Marcia and the volunteers applauded. Max stood at Jack's side, tail sweeping the dirt slowly in a calm rhythm that felt like pride. Jack crouched down, resting a hand on the shepherd's broad back. All this, he whispered, voice rough with emotion, started because of you. I didn't have much left in me. But you stayed. You kept choosing to stay. Max leaned forward and licked the back of Jack's hand, soft, deliberate, as if telling him he'd never needed a reason to choose him. Jack closed his eyes for a moment, grounding himself in the warmth of that simple gesture. For years, his heart had been a battlefield where memories tore through quiet moments, where ghosts whispered in the dark. But now, watching children run across the field, hearing the laughter of volunteers, and feeling Max pressed steadily against his leg, something inside him finally settled. He had a home, not a perfect one, but a real one. He had work that mattered, people who noticed him, a dog who believed in him. Hope didn't come crashing in like a miracle. It arrived gently, through days of effort, through community kindness, through Max's patient eyes. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky gold and warm, Jack sat beside Max on the grass. The dog laid his head on Jack's thigh, content. Children played fetch nearby while their parents chatted about weekend plans. Max's Corner was alive. Jack breathed deeply, steady, unafraid, and for the first time since the war, he didn't brace himself for the next bad thing. Instead, he watched the place he'd helped build, the laughter he'd earned his way back into, and whispered, "We made it, buddy." Max's ear twitched, his warm gaze fixed on Jack with quiet understanding. They both looked toward the field, toward the second chances they had carved from old wounds, and they stayed there, man and dog, at peace in the gentle hum of life they'd found together. Maybe miracles don't always come with thunder or angels in the sky. Sometimes they arrive quietly in the form of a wounded dog, a tired man, a small act of kindness, and a second chance we never expected. Jack and Max found their miracle the day they found each other. And maybe, just maybe, God sends those little signs to all of us in the middle of ordinary days to remind us we're never as alone as we think. If this story touched your heart, share it, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. May God bless you and everyone you love, and may He send you the miracles you didn't know you were praying for.